let's begin with some spontaneous words of prayers and blessing for today's gathering. Bhakti Rasa, your turn today.
Thank you, Maharaj. On this beautiful day, in this gathering of hearts and souls and minds and bodies and so many things circling around the center, may we understand what it means to come together in unity, not in some superficial or artificial way, but deep unity, understanding what wholeness is. And from that place, walk our path, from that place, relate to each other in beautiful and whole ways. Let what comes today be in service to that, be in service to the unfolding of love. Thank you.
Thank you. So, after such Mangalacharan, I welcome you all from Albuquerque, this time, New Mexico, where I arrived yesterday for 1 week with the intention of visiting a few friends, including Father Richard Rohr, that I'm having the fortune of being visiting him in 3 hours or so. So looking forward to that meeting. Probably will be recording another podcast together. Let's see how everything unfolds in his permit. And let's begin with a brief reading from Evolution in Divine Love, as we have been doing the last few weeks, trying to gradually create some momentum for the official launching of the book in a few weeks as well. And of course, it's beautiful to see you all after a few weeks, 2 weeks, basically, of not seeing each other. So I will read from one section in chapter 4, which speaks about the material energy and how matter matters, to make a play of word in English. It says like this: love is the foundational energy driving deep evolution. And this love is not only unconventional, but also unconditional. By its very nature, unconditional love transcends all discrimination, permeating every aspect of existence, not just humanity, but also the world of matter, which serves as a cherished vessel for its expression. As God evolves in love, matter evolves alongside him, becoming an increasingly suitable medium for the expression of divine love. God's omnipresent love inherently includes this world, and thus requires a vessel through which it can be expressed and experienced. Matter, in all of its forms, fulfills this role, undergoing transformation through its connection with God's evolving love. In this process, matter becomes ever more refined and responsive, attuning itself to divine expression. So now, a few introductory thoughts to, I will say, what's the gist of the 4th chapter of Evolution in Divine Love, which is, as love evolves, as God evolves, as we as soul have that same potential, the material energy evolves in tandem to accommodate the ongoing expansion of divine love. So, and of course, that sends us an invitation to review, reframe, recognize our relationship with matter, how we relate to that particular energy, which in its own way, unique way, is ever evolving, as is everything else in existence. So some reflections, in this case from the last chapter of the book, so we can redeem, hopefully, if that's required, redeem our bond with the material energy. If we feel somehow estranged or disjointed from a healthy, wholesome approach to this world, to matter, there's always every chance to, there's always a second chance, a third chance to recalculate, right? To realign our faculties and learn, be open to rediscover matter as a vessel of divine participation, of divine disclosure. In one sense, for many of us, the most immediate reality that there is, before even talking about the soul, the super soul, lila, let's learn how to contact the immediacy of matter in a sacred way, from a sacred space. That's basically the teaching of the Srimad Bhagavatam, our main book, which starts over and over again. It's different narratives describing Virat Rupa, the world as the body of God, thus inviting us to learn to see everything with sacred eyes, basically. And then we can talk about metaphysics, but first let's go to the physical and learn to contact the physical in a redeeming way. That will guarantee that we will integrate and embrace all the other remaining dimensions of reality in an equally deep, broad, respectful approach. So again, that said, welcome to you all once again. And once again, it's never enough. And you are always invited. It's our rhythm in this weekly satsang to bring to the table whatever questions you may have, quests, ideas, topics, burning thoughts that you may like to share in a sacred circle. Let's see what we can do about it all together in community. So I'm seeing first John raising his hand, and then Tribikram Prabhu from New Zealand, and then Sweta Radhika from Ireland. But first, let's go to US Virginia.
Hare Krishna, Swami. Hare Krishna, Siddhatmiya Sangha. Nice to see everybody. Glad that you made it to Albuquerque safely.
Glad that you made it to Virginia safely.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it was wonderful spending some time with you in Bhakti Rasa. And I have some questions on my mind, sort of as a continuation of topics that we had discussed, both maybe directly and indirectly. I'm going to try to connect the two themes if it's possible. If it's not, then you can tell me that it's not possible. But one theme I have on my mind is this, the notion of envy versus jealousy. And I think I never have fully understood the difference, even on a material level. Grammatically speaking, what's the difference between envy and jealousy? Bhakti Rasa and I were having this conversation. It was really edifying, and I think she suggested some good thoughts about it, that envy somehow seeks to reduce the value of the other person to boost one's own value or position. Whereas jealousy, I know you've mentioned, is actually one of the, I don't know if it's primary, secondary, tertiary moods. Even in the spiritual world, there can be jealousy. So that's one topic on my mind. And then specifically, the second topic would be applying that across, let's just say, gender differences. Of course, this world has so many categories that we fight over all the time, but sex and gender is probably the first, and then maybe race and sexuality and various other national boundaries and whatever. But you know, if how to not go through this life feeling jealous or feeling envious of other categories of, you know, this person, this body type has it easier. Or if you happen to be in a body type that does have it easier, how to appropriately use that systemic privilege that's been given to you for really no qualification of your own, just by happenstance, maybe. So specifically, I want you to maybe talk to the point of, you know, not hating ourselves based on these happenstances, these circumstances of us being thrown into a material body or karmically earning a material body, and also not constantly comparing and hating and looking for differences between the types of bodies, whether material or not. So I guess I know that's a lot, but at the core of it, I think, is male and female and why. What's ultimately the difference and why does it matter, even at the spiritual level? And that's all.
And that's all. Thank you. So yeah, there were a few considerations there. Of course, I'll give a one-liner answer that comes, and it's not an answer, it's just a thought, and then we can explore the different venues of it. But the word that came constantly to me was, and again, each word has its own weight and its own invitation, its own challenge. It's not easy. But because you spoke about comparison at the end a little bit, and self-hatred and this and that. So yeah, for me, a big word is gratitude. It's a word, but there is something beyond the word. Of course, the word is pointing to a reality called gratitude. And by gratitude here, I mean learning to be content with what you have, whatever that is. And of course, I'm speaking from a very generic principle-like place, which I think there's a place to say that before addressing individual cases. So no matter where we are, we have to be able to somehow find something to be grateful for and begin there. I'm not saying there are not things to heal, to redeem, to improve. I'm not saying that there are not those things. There's a long list of that stuff. But many times the problem is we start by that stuff. And that list is endless, right? So we may get overwhelmed by what we lack, but what's not yet healed, redeemed on an individual level, on a systemic level, world level, national level, international level, intergalactical level. There's always something. No, we are not in the lockdown down. And we may spend literally our whole life going through that endless list, and to realize that in our last breath, oh, I forgot to be grateful. No, I didn't spend as much time as I could being grateful for those things that were there all the time. But somehow I didn't contact them. How many times, and I'm not here asking for a public confession of anyone, but I think we can all relate to this, that sometimes we go through the motions in our day and a whole day passed, and literally we forgot, we never remember, we never express gratefulness for certain things that we know are there 24/7 in our lives, but we live our 24/7 as if they do not exist. So that's what we call sometimes Maya, which means to live an illusion, to live a life that is not what actual life is, right? So, so I will begin there, right? With gratefulness. And of course, the opposite of that is ungratefulness. And I'm not using the word to bully anyone, to point to anyone. Probably we all indulge in a form of one or the other. And when I say ungratefulness, many times is not that you have a bad intention, it's just that we got distracted, we got carried away by concerns and doubts and fears and negativity. Again, as this research shows, most of us are wired to go to the negative side in our minds. Again, to go to the negative laundry list before going to the gratitude list. Let's be honest, guys. Welcome to the dance. It's fine, right? Don't be afraid or embarrassed to acknowledge that. That's part of what it means to be a conditioned soul and strive to stop being one. And being a sadhaka. Being a sadhaka is someone who is still struggling with that, who still feels at times I see myself drawn to negativity. I see myself drawn to comparison. I see myself drawn to jealousy and envy. So we can go there. Jealousy and envy. That I recall, I never mentioned that there is a secondary rasa as jealousy and envy. But still, those things are mentioned. I mean, those emotions exist in their ideal way in the spiritual world. I'm not denying that. But I'm saying just in this list of 7 secondary rasas that Rupa Goswami gives, jealousy or envy are not mentioned. But they are included somehow because they exist eternally in the spiritual world. Of course, it's a very different form of jealousy and envy. It's all in a way that fulfills the purpose of ever-evolving love, gives Krishna pleasure, heightens the experience of love for everyone involved. So again, that in itself is like, how can envy heighten the experience of love for everyone involved? So again, first we need to deal with the envy we are dealing here over this side. So I will say that jealousy is okay. You cherish something that the other person has, right? Whether it is a possession, another person, a relationship, a position. I mean, it can be anything, and I become jealous. So they have that, I don't have that. I would like to have that. Somehow that's the reach of jealousy, I will say. Again, I'm being a little bit simplistic here. While envy is more like whatever you have, it's a virtue, it's a possession, it's knowledge, it's anything. The very fact that you possess that threatens my existence. So I need you to stop existing so I don't feel threatened anymore, right? Or I need you to stop existing, or I need you to lose that thing that threatens me. So I need you to stop having that possession, having that virtue, having that love you receive, because it mirrors back to some lacking in myself that makes me feel triggered and threatened by your possessing of that. So somehow it's a similar principle to that of jealousy, but it's jealousy on steroids or something, right? Jealousy 2.0 or whatever. And I would say both are born from this lack of self-acceptance. Again, lack of gratefulness for what we have, for who we are, and for all that we can be. Lack of appreciation of all the potential that is knocking on our door at this precise moment. Lack of appreciation for even whatever difficult situation is knocking on our door at this precise moment. That needs to be appreciated in some way. And if someone can be appreciated, we can be grateful for that as well. We don't need to to reject, to hate ourselves, others. We just need a greater capacity for embracing reality, you know, more acceptance. So yeah, both jealousy and envy are founded on a lack of self-worth, basically. I am not enough. So I will be enough when I have what you have. I will be enough when I know what you know. I will be enough when I enjoy what you enjoy, whatever may be the case. Which, of course, it's not true either, right? Like the famous saying says, if you are not content with the things that you have, you will never be content with the things that you don't have, but that you think you should have, right? So if the challenge for each one of us is not so much, okay, whenever this and that happens, then I'm happy. And again, I don't want to sound insensitive. I can understand that there are some difficult situations in which people is in and they may need to urgently solve some basic survival needs. So I don't want to sound insensitive by saying this. I'm just, again, speaking in general way. But again, even if I do not know where I will sleep tonight, I don't know where I will get my next meal, I can understand that survival mode will turn on. But I think there is still place in that situation to see something positive in the midst of it all. Again, I always go to Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. He's in a situation where basically nothing is warranted, everything is lacking, if you want to put it that way. Worst possible tragedy, loss all around, death all around, cruelty. I mean, the whole humanity of humanity starts to crumble. We start to, I mean, as I remember telling you, John, the other day, from something that I was reading recently, like how modernism was a type of naive, over-idealized perception of humanity. Like, I'm falling in love with science and rationality, and we are getting it, we are sophisticated, and we are progressing in every single way through reason, through science, through knowledge, and everything grows more and more and becomes better and better. And in the midst of that type of falling in love with the potential of humanity, boom, you have the Holocaust. And who are the main perpetrators of the Holocaust? The country who arguably was in the world the most sophisticated, the most rationally based, the most science-based, and they engaged in the most inhuman acts you can ever think, so to say. So of course that made humanity stop and question for a moment, what's this? Are we humans? Is there purpose? Is there meaning? And then you have postmodernism as a result of that, a critique to the expectations of modernism. And of course, not only a critique of modernism, but unfortunately an extreme type of cynicism where, okay, there's no meaning, no purpose whatsoever, nihilism, and we go to another extreme, which is neither the solution to the whole thing. So at the end of the day, again, going back to Viktor Frankl, he was in the worst possible scenario, and he found meaning and purpose there. So he showed it's possible. It's possible to begin your day with some positive affirmation, some positive content, some positive appreciation. Yes, as we will say in our tradition, Om. That's the beginning of it all. Om, which is yes, means yes. Then you bring to the table all the no's you want, but please begin with a yes. If you don't begin with the yes, all the no's are out of context, and you probably end up developing a very negative or negatively oriented approach to life. Always surviving, or escaping from something, or always trying to be protected from something, always feeling threatened, always feeling there is some conspiracy, always feeling their enemy is outside. And there's another conversation, but that lends so easily to victimhood, right? To victim consciousness. And again, we can be victims of things, but a very different thing is to even develop a sense of moral worthiness based on being a victim, which happens a lot nowadays, in my opinion, a lot. I mean, I'm not denying there are genuine victims, but when you try to assess your own situation as morally superior to others just by the mere fact of being a victim, I don't think that's, in my opinion, I don't think that's correct, right? Because I mean, I could be all my life saying, I was born in Argentina, I was born in a third world country, and you were born in a first world country, guys, you guys from Europe and US. So therefore, I'm superior to me, and you own me something, right? And you own me something, no? Or like, I don't know, I'm born in native tradition, and as we were talking the other day, and today I saw a video popping up in my YouTube channel that everyone is native originally, as we were talking the other day. We are all original indigenous somehow or other. But if I could bring the argument, I was born in this particular native tribe, and you guys are the colonial, the conquistadors. So therefore, you abuse, and your grandparents killed my grandparents. So now you owe me something. You're in debt with me. Again, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I mean, I agree with acknowledging the horrors of the past, learning our lessons, holding ourselves accountable for what we have done individually. But for me, that's not the same as saying, okay, I was born Jewish, and I'm going to Germany, and all the people in this country owe me something because of what happened in the Holocaust 1 century ago. Again, that's for me a way of trying to earn moral worth or positioning myself just by the mere fact of someone else being wrong in something. So sometimes that's called a cult of innocence. So anyhow, I'm going to a few different places here, but somehow it's all related. So I was saying this example of Viktor Frankl, right? He didn't play the victim, I can tell you that. He became a hero. Of course, he was a victim, as we were speaking about the evolution of the famous survival, the famous drama triangle. One of them is victim, and from victim you become a survivor, and from a survivor you become a hero, ideally. Again, I'm not saying everyone makes that, but in principle the potential is there. So we don't need to play the victim. Each one of us, there is something called karma, and we should talk about that, not in any insensitive way. That's of course important. It's not because, okay, you were born here or there. Not, we wouldn't say that's random. There is a reason for that. We may not know the specific details of every case, why you were born in a female, male body, this color, that color, this country, that country, this situation, that situation. I mean, we are overwhelmed enough with what we have on our plate right now, right here. Imagine if I bring you all the details of your previous life and why you are in this lifetime. Now you may say, no, thank you. I have enough with this one. Because if I bring the previous life, we may start to question, but why the previous life? So bring the previous life to the table. And then we end in this eternal regress that it's a zooming in that will take us to the madhouse. It's too much to process. So that's why I say, realistically, practically speaking, there is an argument to start whatever you need to change, whenever you need to improve, whatever we feel needs to be redeemed. Let's start from a foundation of acceptance. I can only do that by accepting where I am now. Even if something needs to change, that will change from the place of being where I am. I'm being hopefully grateful for something of all that, and not just perceiving that everything that is about my life is bad, negative, unjust, undeserved. Because if that's the case, probably I'm playing the victim too much. So courageousness and bravery and maturity is required to live a successful life, so to say. And that has a lot to do with acceptance. Even when sometimes I know we may not know the details of why this, why that is happening in this way, but But we have so many questions we could ask. Again, I never see Viktor Frankl asking, why this to me? Why I'm in Auschwitz? Why the concentration camp? Why they treated me like that? Why the soldier did that to me yesterday? Why I don't have a pizza for lunch here in the concentration camp? I mean, there's no time for any of those whys. But he was asking other types of questions, of course, that drew him to such a rich depth of discovery of meaning and purpose. So again, we may not be in that situation, but each of us have to find purpose and meaning in their own lives, and each of us can create an holocaust around us, inside of us. So, and probably it all begins how you start your day. Again, going back to a practical advice and acceptance, gratitude, appreciation, and owning your life, instead of looking, oh, the grass always seems greener on the other side of the fence. I mean, if you want to be in anxiety, if you want that I give you the most successful formula for anxiety, comparison. Just compare yourself with someone else. There will always be some lacking, something that you feel it's better on that side, which is not true, generally speaking. When you actually enter the shoes of the other, you realize, oh, it was not as idealized as I was thinking from my perspective. So at the end of the day, the game of life is not to be played by jumping on the fence and living life from the perspective of everyone else's, but finally reaching the point that one can accept and own, okay, I am who I am. I am my own self. I'm living this life. What to do with it? And then we go to the foundational question again, who I am. What's the purpose of life, and how to live my life in a way that the lives of other people are not a threat to my life, that I don't need to see enemies outside, that I don't need to compare, that I don't need to erase other people's qualities or anything. I don't need to erase anything. I can only accept and include and integrate even things that are not becoming, that are not desirable. They have a place in existence. I cannot just press a button and make envy disappear from the world. It's there, so I can acknowledge that, but how can I acknowledge and embrace and integrate envy from a place of understanding and compassion, as we say? Envy is just insecurity, no? You are too self-unsure. One has too little self-worth and self-confidence. So whatever little thing someone else has, it threatens to shatter all my existence. So that's a compassion. I mean, if you really see envy that way, hopefully you cannot but be compassionate to that person. Instead of saying, oh, that's such a demonic, monstrous, envious rascal or whatever. You can see, oh, that's such a fragile, insecure, little soul who actually needs confidence, who actually needs to love himself, herself from a healthy place, self-acceptance. And of course, whenever we say that to other person, probably immediately the wind comes back and invites us to ask where I am in those terms. How much self-acceptance I have, because generally it's a mirroring, it's an ongoing mirror. If I cannot accept anyone, if someone is envious and I just label them as the worst of the worst, probably it's because I'm treating myself in similar ways. If I learn to see my own envy or my own shortcomings with acceptance and self-compassion, probably I will be able to see everyone else's shortcomings with similar lenses. So we have to pay attention to our inner dialogue, to our inner dynamics. How and when we are triggered, what's the narrative that ensues, how that speaks about ourselves instead of others, and what do we need to repair at home to begin with, instead of trying to fix the whole world, so to say. So I will say that once we work on this with integrity and with commitment and with discipline and with constancy, and with guidance, we can have another conversation about envy and jealousness, jealousy in the spiritual world as an assisting emotion to the ever-evolving heightening of divine love. Because before that, we will just filter all those words and ideas with our unresolved stuff regarding envy, jealousness, and so on and so forth, right? So those are some thoughts are coming again, nothing specifically systematic, but trying somehow to address some of the themes presented in the questions. I don't know if that makes sense, John, if that helps somehow.
Yes, it helps a lot. Thank you. There was a lot there. Somehow you were able to take the lot that I gave you and equally return it to its lot.
I had no other option. You gave me no other option, so thank you for that. Okay, thank you. And of course, I hope it was of some usefulness for all of us as well here. It was for me, so thank you. Let's continue with the next offering. So fasten your seatbelt and we will fly in 10 seconds from Virginia to New Zealand. There we are. That was a fast airplane. Now you have to adjust to the time zone. You have like 19 hours or something different, but anyhow, that's another conversation. Trivikram Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you. Thank you. Actually, incidentally, there was a story about Prabhupada, and I heard, and it was, he was in the association of some of his disciples, probably his secretary, and another devotee called Aravinda, who had a health issue of acute or chronic asthma. He was an asthmatic. Anyway, there was one point in the story where Aravinda was really having an asthmatic attack. He was coughing and wheezing and struggling so much. And at a certain point, Prabhupada was hearing this, and he was kind of just sort of like, it was a familiar thing that was going on. So he was sort of like smiling and chuckling a little bit. But there was this point when it was coming from another room, so he was sort of interacting with this other disciple. Anyway, it was reportedly that this devotee, Aravinda, was saying, "Why me? Why me? Why me?" Like that, like while he was struggling to get a breath. And Prabhupada turned to the other disciple in the room and he said, "This is the one question you cannot ask," which was quite an interesting response, and it's sort of in line with what you were saying. And it kind of, what you were saying, responding to John, is somewhat reflected in my question today. And it's, I'll just try and articulate my thoughts a little bit. It's based on the ideal, I guess, an ideal of a community or an institution that represents the ideal of community, which is heart-based and it nurtures its individuals, and it is centered around that primarily. So the question would be, why have we, I guess it could be bounced off radical organization, but why have we never been able to really establish as a foundational principle these heart-based or care-based, devotee care-based communities? It seems there's different angles from that. There's obviously the introspective side, like you're reflecting on the gratitude consciousness, that we should look at ourselves and not expect too much, not feel entitled. Nonetheless, there seems to be, yeah. I mean, I had a little example, because there's a couple of devotees and I have a similar experience where I heard just recently these devotees, lovely devotees that are very inspired devotees that want to, give their creativity and their energy, and they are very generous with their time and resource. Nonetheless, this devotee wanted to contribute at a festival, a food festival that the institution was putting on, and they came up with an initiative that somehow or other they could contribute some stall or whatever, which would have a dual purpose thing of supporting their own needs in some capacity, probably quite small, but just in order to meet the cost of the running, or even not. But the thing was shunned by the management, and it made me just feel a little sad that as a movement we haven't, I'm talking about ISKCON, we haven't evolved to a point where we can invest the sort of belief and trust and goodwill in its members, that we would be willing to actually support initiatives that both, don't bypass statements like water the root of the tree and forget your own needs, so to speak. So, yeah, I mean, there's more to say on that. And obviously, one's past karmic things one has to live through, and all that side of things. But anyway, I'll just throw that to you. I don't know if there's something you can make out of that. Can unpack it a little.
I'll try. Yeah, thank you. So, I would say that the first idea that came was that many times we are conditioned to expect some, like you are using this word movement and you are referring to ISKCON. Of course, I'm not affiliated to ISKCON, so in one sense, I do not personally relate to that in one sense. So my point here is, like, in my opinion, we shouldn't expect that the movement does the whole thing at some point, something like that. Sometimes I feel we have a little bit over-idealized expectations for a movement to do it all. And many times the way that it happens is by us doing what the movement is not doing, especially when a movement becomes too big. You cannot, I mean, there will always be compromises in something that becomes bigger and bigger. And this, you can analyze the story of any big movement. I mean, and I'm not saying that's wrong, that's bad. It's just what happens. And when things get too bigger, they need to become more smaller in some way to remain personal, to remain more specific, to remain more relatable in terms of community, in terms of care of people. And sometimes the heads of the movement, so to say, or the movement, whatever we understand by a movement, the institution, may not be able or willing in some cases, or maybe busy with other things. And if we find that call, we feel that call, we should do that. Sometimes I think that that's one of the temptations with being part of a big movement, that we kind of expect that the big movement does everything for us, or like facilitates all the things, and we just need to jump in and do as we are told, or like, okay, you assist in this department, but we have all the departments already functioning and working, and everyone can fit in whatever they feel better, something like that. And I don't think that's that's healthy. And I don't think that's happening. Besides ISKCON, I'm not talking about ISKCON here, I'm talking in general. Like, you can analyze the Catholic Church, and you can see a big movement, way bigger than ISKCON, of course, and lots of terrible things going on in a big movement, but also lots of beautiful things going on under the banner of that big movement. And many times individuals doing incredible things on their own, whether they may identify themselves as Catholic, but they are not doing that depending on what the institution says and what the movement says. So I think there is a point that, again, that's why I always like to redefine movement as something moving inside of us and not just a mere set of papers and rules and institutional considerations and bricks and buildings or people telling us what to do. But a movement is something that moves inside of us and is moving us to do something. And if that inner movement is genuine, the outer movement, so to say, should be validating that, should be supportive of that. And if that's not the case, well, you already should know which is the actual movement to follow. Because every single movement is an inner movement to begin with. If the outer movement betrays the inner movement, we shouldn't be willing to betray the inner movement ourselves. And that's why I say many times movements or institutions, they get too big. And at one point they start to become too big, too much concern with externals, neglecting people's needs at times. Not maybe because they had that intention, but because they are overwhelmed with the bigness of the movement and trying to keep structures in place or moral codes and trying to approach to keep this set of basic moral rules in place without concern for further transformation of its members. And again, I'm not saying that's something done with anyone's bad intention, but those are things that happen, and that's when one needs to know where I am and what I need, and sometimes one needs to take a distance from all that stuff. And you need to rediscover yourself as independent of a movement, basically. I don't need to have my identity validated by an institution, basically. The institution is in service to everyone's identity, not the other way around. I shouldn't lose my identity. And of course, in the beginning, that's how we build our sense of identity. We come with a confused, broken sense of identity. We join an institution and we develop a sense of identity exclusively based on the institution, on the movement or the mission, whatever word we need to use. But that's not individuation at all. That's an initial, understandable, probably survivable type of conformity, which again, I'm not criticizing. It makes sense for some period of time, but eventually everyone needs to become their own person. And that may at times clash with institutional dynamics or institutional official stances. And that's where, of course, we come to that liminal space when we are, so what to do now, right? Because if I do this or I say that, I will be banished by the institution, I will not belong, I will be rejected, I will lose my tribe, they will say this about me, I will lose my identity, I will be a betrayer, blah, 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 black sheep. And again, those fears are understandable because behind them is like, I will stop belonging, I will stop existing. Though we may not say it like that, but it's like, if my whole identity revolves around being part of an institution, when I'm no longer part of the institution, who I am? Do I still exist? Oh yeah, I'm here. I'm here, but who I am now? That can be a scary question, right? How can do I exist beyond an institutional framework? Hopefully so. Because again, institutions are there to facilitate individuation. That's the role of a spiritual institution. It has to facilitate individuation, to promote spiritual individuals to become all that they can be, not to keep them in a bonsai format, in a cage, like conforming to very basic rules that are only required in kindergarten, right? at one point they're no longer fit anymore. You need a new set of clothes. Like if I hand you now a t-shirt that you used when your body was 5 years old, and you will say like, and I was like, put it, and it's like it doesn't fit me anymore. I have outgrown that. I cannot use that again. It will be uncomfortable, suffocating. I mean, it doesn't work. So the same with this. We cannot force individuals to continue wearing a t-shirt that we have outgrown for decades. But we should normalize, oh, let's get a new t-shirt. You are getting bigger now. And it's exciting. Let's go and buy t-shirts. You are growing, you're maturing. Congratulations. We have to organize a party instead of stigmatizing you for growing. Now, how you dare to outgrow your 6-year-old t-shirt? That's such a challenging thread. No. That's an occasion for celebration. So yeah, maybe intentionally, I don't think I'm using too many strong words here, but even if it sounds like that, that's intentional in the sense that I know that some of us may still hold to institutional validation for us to be someone, or for us to feel that we are on the right side, for us to feel we many times, and again, I'm not condemning that, but I think it's important to develop a healthy sense of inner authority in conjunction with outer authority. I'm not against outer authority, but that doesn't mean for me just having someone to tell me what to do in a very dictatorship-like way. But it's good to have elders and guides and gurus and mentors that we draw inspiration from. Outer authority, but inner authority has to be there also. Bhagavatam says that in its own words. At times you have to be your own guru. You cannot get more clear than that. At times you have an outer guru, someone who is inspiring you from the outside, whether it's a person, it's nature, it's a life circumstance. At times you have to be your own guru. You have to resort to inner authority. I'm not saying that this is the lesson to learn from a newcomer, for a newcomer, but at one point, yeah. So again, institutions come and go. Let's be honest. Institutions, we shouldn't absolutize an institution. Institutions start, maintain for some time, are gone after some time. I mean, I don't want to sound like a cynic, and someone may think you are, and that's because you've gone through your own wounds and scars, and okay, probably some scars are there. But if you study the history of humanity, institutions are relative, are a vessel that ideally tries to facilitate, but also they are affected by time, culture, come and go, up and down, collapse, die. They need to be reborn in a new shape. I mean, that's normal. It's okay. That's not speaking bad about anyone, right? We shouldn't feel uncomfortable like, oh, that means that you say that ISKCON is not as spiritual or as eternal as I thought it was. No, I depends what we understand, as I spoke many times, for ISKCON. You have the institutional definition of ISKCON, or you can speak of ISKCON and Srila Prabhupada's melted heart, as I like to put it. So if I take the last definition, of course, I'm not talking in any institutional terms, but the institutional vessel of ISKCON or anything for that matter, that's something relative, comes and goes, will have shortcomings, flaws, relativities, like any institution. So we shouldn't be like horrified by that. We should not over-absolutize institutions. We should, again, be personalists, radical personalists. So concentrate on the heart, on the individual, on the movement that is going on inside of that, and from that basis, take care of each other, create communities, support each other. There may be big movements out there or not, supporting or not supporting what you are doing or feeling. That can be, and if that's there and it's supportive of you, great. But if it's not there, we cannot just freeze and wait for the big institution to bless me or to give me permission to feel or think or act or do what my heart really clearly feels it should be done. So I think that's a step that all of us at some point of our journey we need to take. In the words of Prabhupada, I want all of you to become independent thinking people. That means independent from an institution even. Independently thinking, independently thoughtful means independent of what? So again, by institution here, I'm separating that from the notion of parampara, for example, the notion of personal connection and interaction with a saintly figure. That's not exactly the same at all that takes place in the name of an institution. We may be connected with a wise elder, mentor. We may be connected with the guru inside, Chaitya Guru, manifesting on outside, a Siksha gurus, different sorts. I'm not saying that that's institution. Institution is something else. And all that may be happening in the context of an institution, but at the same time, it's beyond the institution, right? So you can have a connection with the guru. In one sense, that's trans-institutional. Though there is an institution in the context of that somewhere, and I don't want to sound insulting to that, but that's secondary. In my opinion, again, we may agree to disagree. I'm totally fine with it. But that's why I personally feel that, yeah, one should have connection with people first, not with institutions. One should receive instruction and guidance from individuals, not from boards or committees of people that you don't even know who they are. And you may receive like a letter or something from the higher quarters, so to say, but it's utterly impersonal because you don't know who are the person behind you, didn't receive a chance to have a conversation, but you are expected to obey if you want to remain in the institution. That for me, those are not healthy dynamics, and I can understand that things happen when the things get too big and you need to keep some structure and control and keep things in place. But also there is a place for disruption of order, holy crisis. That's the role of the prophets, so to say, to point at what needs to change, to point at what needs to die many times, at what needs to collapse in order to be reborn, and not just to keep all the structures in place forever when it's clearly that they have, again, outgrown and they need a bigger t-shirt, continuing the analogy. Anyhow, some thoughts. I don't know if I addressed some of your points, Trikram, if that makes any sense. That helps.
No, it's very helpful, Maharaj. Only one thing I would, no disagreement, but the idea of maintenance, and you said you can't absolutely expect the institution, and I accept that. But at the same time, when we're, I guess the spirit of like a child that wants to do a lemonade stall at the gate, and the parents try and show the support of the child by probably investing way more than the return would ever be in that little project, that type of kind of initiative, even whether you have to say, look, we scale down our sanghas because it's gotten too big, and yeah, I accept all that. But if you're maintaining a car in service, there shouldn't be any kind of issues with putting oil in the car to maintain it. So you actually get a future out of that service, the potential of service. So if we're investing in individuals, at least the spirit of being investing and empowering and having the belief in your child or your subordinates to empower them to do more. You know, obviously there's limitations to the institution, and that will have to be constantly upgraded and reevaluated. But you know, I think in terms of Prabhupada's as a visionary of community or of a movement, he must have had sort of things that he was aspiring to achieve, even if he always, he may have fallen short, but it's not. I believe that's what you were trying to reflect on with radical organization and the principles of radical personalism, that we get back on track with what we're, what is supportive of our ultimate goal, which is basically uplifting individuals. So yeah.
Thank you. So after this question, before going to Swetati Radhika's question, we will go to breakout rooms. I forgot to do so after John's question, so sorry for that. It's still new for me, so sometimes I remember, sometimes I forget. So Bhakti Rasa will invite us for a few breakthrough rooms, so we can discuss some thoughts regarding this later. Question by Trivikram Prabhu about care, about institution, about movement, about our role as individuals. Maybe share with each other where we find our place, in which place we find ourselves present in connection to all this. 5, 6, 7 minutes. She will invite us and we'll be back. For those who cannot join for any reason, still you can do your inner homework during these minutes and reflect and continue to ruminate to gain further clarity. We are back.
Kind of quick. That went quick.
What?
That seemed kind of short this time.
Yeah, it did.
That means you were having a good time.
Yeah.
How many minutes is it supposed to be?
You had a good time or not, Rasangi? That's a question.
We had a good time, but not enough. A little bit more would have been nice.
Some longing needs to be inserted there, no problem. We will do one more after this and we will give you 10 more seconds so you are fully satisfied. I'm such a cruel Swami, right? Sorry. Any problem, speak to Bhakti Rasa. She's the one managing those breakout rooms, not me. Thank you. I hope you had a good sharing, and sorry if it was too short. We'll try to make it a little longer next time. We'll go to the last question that I saw Swetati Radhika raising her hand before we went to the breakout room. So please, Swetati Radhika from Ireland, over there, welcome.
Pranam Maharaj. Actually, I just wanted to make a comment about the previous question or answer or exploration before asking a question. So I just noticed how you don't use the word devotee care, but it's like one of the words that's used a lot, like in this institutional setting. And I notice how I feel I have some sort of a bitter relationship with that word now, because it's used so much, like so many seminars and talks and this and that going around without it actually having an impact, like a real impact. So I thought that's interesting. Like, I don't know if it is intentional in you not using that word, or you just don't relate to it or something.
Okay, thank you. I was not aware of the local, again, ISKCON situation in that regard and how that the word may create, a particular impact or not. But yeah, of course, I agree with the idea of not, as Trivikram is mentioning in the chat, not rendering lip service to important notions like devotee care. What means devotee care? I mean, I should care, right? So I shouldn't just say that I care, but I should show that I care. That's the only way I care. And sometimes I don't need to even use the word, but I need to show that I care. And yeah, I agree that sometimes we can end up using words too much as a way of not having to play out the practical implications of those words. And then the word become problematic and traumatizing, even like every time I hear that word, it triggers me, whatever. So thank you for sharing that.
Okay, thank you, Maharaj. And the question, so this is related to the quote you read from your new book about material nature evolving.
Mm.
That made me think, like, this may be like a bunch of questions. I don't know. Let's see. So I was thinking, like, how do we, so if all of us are evolving, including material nature, then it seems like we all could be evolving at different speeds. So, how do we know, like, we are up to date on, and relating to material nature, or is it even important to be up to date? Maybe it's not possible. I don't know. And I was thinking how, like, personally for me, when I think of, like, how I relate to material nature, that has changed over time. And I can't really tell how the material nature has evolved, but I see that as my relationship has changed. So how can I tell, like, I mean, how do we know, like, the material nature is also evolving? For me, it seems like my relationship and my idea of material nature is changing. So, yeah, kind of two things, how to keep up, and also, like, how do we know?
Mm.
I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, it does, at least to me. Thank you. So, as we talked the other day with you, Swetadit Radhikan, Bhaktirasa, and John, that the notion that everything is evolving all the time could feel a little bit overwhelming to some, right? It's like, okay, great, but put pause, right? Allow me to breathe. Allow me to reach a plateau and then continue walking, continue evolving, continue moving, right? Because of course, when we hear a description like the description of the daily dynamics of the Lila in Vrindavan, for example, in Golok Vrindavan, and it doesn't stop, right? If you really pay attention to that, I mean, they literally do not sleep. Or if they sleep, it's like a few minutes. So I don't want any of you to feel nervous about going to a place where there's sleep deprivation or something, because that's not how it works. But they are doing something always. They are serving, they're loving, everything is growing and increasing at every moment forever. So my point again is, for us now here, that can feel like, okay, great, but give me a break. At one point, I need to catch my breath, is too much. So that's an important point. And I will say that in the context of that ever-evolvingness of everything, it's all in the context of love, right? The fact that love is ever-evolving doesn't mean that you are left behind if you miss the train, so to say. Like, okay, love evolved. The latest update is that love has evolved from 0.2, 0.3 to 2.4 5 minutes ago. And if I do not catch that evolving level, I'll miss the love train and I will be left behind, and so on, right? We can go like this. Oh, Krishna is evolving and becoming something more. And if I'm not keeping up with that, evolving in tandem, oh, I've missed Krishna. Forever. He went on his evolution journey. Am I over here lost? But that's not the experience we have, I will say, because we've missed the train a few times already. We missed entire train stations for lifetimes. And still Krishna's there, right? It's not that Krishna comes as, I'm so far ahead of you. I mean, you have been 3 eons of lifetimes looking somewhere else. I'm so evolved. So I just came to tell you that, good luck, and he lives. No, that's not how it works. So the fact that God and loves continue to evolve endlessly and everything alongside with it, that's, again, includes all the previous iterations of that. So whenever we are, if we sincerely try to make an effort to grow to the next step we need to grow into, not to the final step, because there's no final step to begin with, but we should be realistic, right? I'm in this particular situation. Okay, how can I aim to a better version of myself that is realistic, that is sustainable, that I can shoot at, I aim at, and if I keep missing that, probably I'm aiming too high. That can happen also, right? So that's an important consideration for us practitioners, especially since we have such a highly developed, refined, described in detail ideal of transcendence and divine love. So we may shoot for a very high level of next stage, which is not the actual next stage. So we may find ourselves failing miserably. Oh, I'm still not there where Raghunath Goswami is. I'm not still there in that ecstatic mood. And that may mean you are aiming too high. You may need to aim a little bit lower so you can really aim at the target. Not miss the target over and over again. Maybe if we keep missing the target over and over again, that doesn't speak about how bad you are, but how high you are aiming, and it's not realistic to where you are. So that may require humble acknowledgement of where we are. That's how the only way you can know what's the next stage to take. No? Instead of like fantasizing about Prema Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, and trying to be there in a weekend. I mean, Rupa Goswami says that you want to taste Bhakti Rasa, that requires a few lifetimes of Bhakti Samskar. So relax. Not relax that much, but also don't get neurotic about, I have to get that medal in this lifetime. I have to get that trophy in a weekend or something. It's lifetimes of churning. So first that, right? Yeah, love is evolving, God is evolving, matter is evolving. Sometimes we do not feel that we are evolving, but even as I mentioned in arguing my book, even when we feel we are not evolving, and we are stagnant, stuck in one place, generally we are never in the same place being the same person. There's always something new going on. Even if we feel we are going in circles, there's always something new to be learned. So nothing is exactly repeating itself in the same way. So that will be one thing. Which was the other question? Or maybe I already addressed that, I don't know.
Oh, I was just asking, I was just relating to like, how I feel about like material nature or something, that like my relationship is changing. How do I know material nature is also changing, or that like I am just...
Yeah, well, you're speaking about relationships, so you can only speak about relationship with someone. So there must be a person on the other side. And in our tradition, material nature is described personally. Whether we speak of as Maya Devi, material energy personified, whether you speak about Bhumi, planet Earth personified, so there is a person on the other side. And in this case, these people, whether you want to speak in terms of planet Earth or material energy, are described in our text as Vaishnavas or Vaishnavis, to be more specific. And utterly devoted, surrendered Vaishnavis. So that's how scripture informs us that, yes, material energy, material nature is a person, is a Vaishnavi, utterly pure, surrendered, devoted Vaishnavi. So that means they are constantly evolving in divine service. So whenever I contact, that's why whenever we contact material energy for what it actually is, we can also have a new experience of it. Not only because we are ideally, hopefully, also evolving, but also because the person on the other side is evolving. It's like with any relationship, right? Like try to think about your relationship with your partner, right? It's not like, okay, I feel something new. It's because I am evolving or because the other person is evolving. Hopefully because both are evolving. It's not just one thing. Like some people say, okay, I read Bhagavad Gita and I read Bhagavad Gita again and again and again after 20 years, and the book is always new. I find always something new. And someone might say, yes, because you continue to grow and awake, so to say. Yes, but also because the nature of the Bhagavad Gita or any other revealed wisdom remains in evolution as well, remains in its own growing trajectory. So it's at the same time, both are growing. It's not just, okay, which of these two is evolving? Both, ideally. Both ideally. Of course, in our case, if we are not willing to grow and evolve or to acknowledge that, we may not have the experience of things growing and relationships changing. But things are evolving and changing, whether it is the material world, God, scripture, love, all that is reaching a new layer of momentum. But unless we do our part on our own evolution, we will miss the whole party, so to say. We will live in an utterly static world, not ecstatic. So everything will feel stagnant, stuck, always the same, boring. Material nature will seem inert, dead. God seems unexistent. Love is obsolete. I cannot find it. Though all those things are there, constantly evolving, but again, we need to do our part so we can then suddenly realize, oh, that's also everywhere else. Again, it's a type of lenses we wear, so to say. So if I wear the lenses of, we were talking before, jealousy or envy, probably I will see everything died, so to say, affected by those lenses. So if I wear lenses where I'm willing to grow and evolve and change, I probably will be able to catch how those things are happening everywhere else, and I will be able to have dynamic relationships with everything instead of having stagnant relationships with everything, which how much you can call it a relationship. So yeah, let's not forget, material nature is a person. Not only a person, is a Vaishnav, a Vaishnavi. It's a lover of God. So of course they're evolving, of course they're growing, but again, we need to address them in similar terms, so to say, and be willing to learn the language that they are trying to speak to us. So I don't know if that helps.
It does, Maharaj. Thank you. I really love that, what you said about material nature being a person, which means like our relationship is also like unique, like just like our relationship with Krishna, each one of our relationship is unique. Somehow I just had this idea that like, oh, there is nature and we all kind of have to have this sort of relationship or like, connect. I didn't think before that it's a unique relationship. So yeah, that's really very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. Okay, so it's 1:30 on my end in Albuquerque, and in a few hours, as I told you, I'm in less than a few hours, I'm going to visit Father Richard Rohr, so I have to organize myself here with a few details. So I will stop my part here, but we'll go one more time before concluding to our breakthrough rooms. Okay, now you seem more happy with a few extra minutes. I was afraid. I think they were conducting a whole movement against to protest about the lack of minutes for the breakthrough room. So it seems you had enough breakthrough for today. So I'm happy to witness your smiling faces. Thanks so much for joining us today again, and looking forward to meeting you next Saturday, same time, same channel, ever new evolving hearts. Shri Sachinandan Gaur Hari Ki Jai, Shri Man Mahaprabhu Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premanand Hari Hari Bol, Vancha Kalpataru Vishya Kripa Sindhu Vyayevacha, Chitanam Pavanebhya Vaishnavebhya Namo Namo. Thank you so much. See you all soon. Amanda.